What up, what up, what up? It's another episode of the Shark Cove. I'm your host, Emric, Esports with Emric. It's a fantastic episode predicated off of all of the things that have happened over the last couple of days. We're talking refunds, we're talking ignorance, we're talking people that don't know how to read projections or just don't simply care. But they're diamond status, so we just got to let them ride. They know what they're talking about. But we're going to try and educate some other people. So I brought on possibly 2022's number one esports player of the year. That's what we thought until Cody started taking them all down. So he's got some competition, but you've seen him here on the Cove before. It's Nathan. Nathan, how you doing today?
Doing great. It is tough to be the number one esports player when you just jam a million stacks of Team Wii and they lose in that fashion. So I don't know if I'm coming for that spot anytime soon. Cody's gonna pass me for sure.
Yeah, man, I was the same way. I played like two IG lineups. Luckily, one of them was the Nuts. Unfortunately, I didn't play it in the Bounty Hunter, and I decided to play a bunch of cash games yesterday instead of like maxing out the Triumphant Warrior. Just really bad decision. Like I've been undefeated in cash, with the exception of the one loss to you. And I lost all of them to Ian and Esgog. So they got a little bit of money back. Alex Gee was hiding in the $1,000 stakes, but I guess Moose got him, so he says. So I believe him, but we were probably all on the similar teams. Next guest that I have, some of you may know, maybe you don't, but if you don't, you should. It's Paydirt. He runs the Paydirt website. James McCool, welcome to the Cove.
Yo, what's up, dude? Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I'm happy to have you here. I will tell you a little story that when you first started doing projections, at least I think it was when you first started. It's when I at least paid attention to it. This was pre-number ball. It was just basketball projections at that time. This was pre-DraftKings. I subbed to you there, and then I think you went to like DraftKings or number ball or something, and I didn't have the projections anymore. So I just remember a really good Paul Millsap day. You were really high on him. Fantasy Labs wasn't. It was a fantastic day for me.
Yeah, I remember. I've been building projections for a bevy of different sports for a long time, and like I started out on Roto Grinders and just like writing for free, and then I was like, hey, this is going pretty well, and then I started building my own stuff, and I worked for Daily Roto for a little while, and then I kind of broke off my own for a little while and just like took tips and was like, hey, if you like my stuff, like give me $5, and like I'll keep giving you access to it. And then obviously that's led to like a lot of opportunities for me. But now I have paydirtdfs.com. That's my site, and things go great. I mean, I have every single sport under the sun, and even though I hate NBA with every fiber of my being, I mean, literally every fiber of my being, I still offer it. Projections are good, but really, I think that if you ask anybody that's been with me for a long time, my esports projections are just like the nuts. They're so much better than what I can offer for a lot of different things, because the models like mathematically are a lot more sound in a sport that is within the esports realm. When I say that, I don't mean like the projection itself is better. I mean that the math in building better projections is easier for esports. And like we can talk about that as we like keep going into it, but I personally think the math is a lot cleaner when it comes to esports.
Yeah, I'm all right with you, dude. I stopped playing NBA last year. I mean, I'll every once in a while I'll jump into it, but I feel like my life is so much better that I don't have to sit around till 7. I'm not worried about it. It's just a better way of living. What a terrible life that was, Nathan. I mean, you're young though, so you can still go through this. I've put my body through that, and I just can't anymore.
I have a very much love-hate relationship with NBA. I've had my 2 most winning days of my DFS career in NBA, going to the final this year, which is cool. But the majority of my NBA days are just me watching my lineups slowly start at the top and then trickle their way down the leaderboard until I just almost, I get like 10% back or something, and it's just like, sucks. That one random chocolate value just goes off and he's somehow like 75% owned, and I just hate my life mostly. So it's a really love-hate relationship because it's just so much fun, but also like it's just such a time suck. So I don't know. I've contemplated just stop playing it, but
I will say that I do love that the chat is, we're still on this refund thing, and I don't know when this is ever going to end. I mean, if anybody from the Fantasy Penna is watching, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, it is what it is. This is what happens, and congratulations. And then you have Gugs, just forever asking for a refund. We need to set some, some guidelines on when Gugs is going to be banned, because at some point enough is enough. And DraftKings is going to put their foot down and be like, look, you're just not putting enough money into the ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, though, Nathan, and I think I said this to you, it's actually really good that some of these guys got their refunds, because that's just free money that DraftKings is giving them back. And I mean, I know that they win every slate. You win every slate. I don't win every slate, but those slates that I do win, I'm going to get some of that money back. So I'm pretty excited about it. Yesterday, so I tied for first place, barely made a profit, but it was okay. It's okay.
I did way better than I did. Also, like I said, played a bunch of Team Wii. Threw them in all my winner take all contests. Threw them in a majority of my GPPs. When that thing happens, you're gonna win a couple cash games, and that's about it. So last night was rough. It's been a rough.
It wasn't rough for Cody. Cody
just won everything.
I mean, it was, that was like the spring 2021 like nut lineup. It's like it's a Kanavi captain with the Zune, and then I was watching it and I'm like, all right, come on. And then just Kanavi just in that second game just kept getting kill after kill. I'm like, you just outrun hope, just steal the kill, and he just kept doing it. Tower diving with the Viego ultimate. I was like, yeah, man, like this is it. This is going to be the nuts. And it didn't matter that Gen G was able to come back. They were plus money going into that second game, which was crazy. But there was no way. It got close. There was a little bit of fiesta. And in fact, in the $5, and that guy's got to be kicking himself, a 369 captain with a Chovy one-off mid ends up being the nut lineup, but he didn't put it in the $15 lineup.
Didn't have $15 to spend, man.
And what's the $5? It's $1K to first.
It was $1K to first.
Still $1,000. Can't complain.
Yeah, it's probably a 10x. Probably 10x. I mean, if he just had $5, it's great. But who knows? Yeah. I didn't look and see how many lineups he put in. So, So let's part of the reason I wanted to bring both of you guys on the same show is because of some of the things that were said in the Discord as we were debating whether or not it was ethically okay to have the COVID-19 tags on there, and the misunderstanding that some people have with some of the data. I mean, that's a very simplistic thing. It's the COVID-19 tag on a person, but more so like people's misinterpretation of projections. What are projections? How do you interpret projections? What constitutes a good projection? And when a projection misses, is it okay that it missed? Like, I mean, James, I'm gonna throw it to you. You've been doing projections for a long time. Apparently, some people think all the pros do projections, which is not the case. But tell us about projections.
Well, one, I think most pros actually use aggregates. I think there are less pros that build their own projections than there are pros that use industry aggregate projection sources. Like, you got to understand that when you build projections, so as a content creator, right, as somebody who builds projections, the amount of time that I have to use those projections gets cut like drastically down if I have to be building them. Say on an NBA slate, I have to build projections, and then we get, like, I have all my stuff set up, I have all my rules set up, I have all my lineups ran, everything like that. Say that I'm MMEing 150, which I would never do because I'm not insane. But say that you're MMEing 150 in NBA. And then it's 10 minutes before the slate happens, and then like a major person gets ruled out. It's like, okay, well, now I have to rerun everything. And that takes, I don't know, I think my NBA models take about 6 minutes to rerun and then get re-uploaded most of the time, if I'm lucky. And that's if I know about the situation. If it's a completely just random scrap, like Jimmy Butler stubbed his toe walking down the stairs or something like that, and now he's not going to play, then, it takes more time on that. So as a person who is building out those projections and has to go through that process, now the amount of time that I've that I have to actually use the projections that I built has been cut down to like 4 minutes, and I have to run and I have to be like, those are my lineups for the night. And like most people have been through that, and that sucks. But if you're running with an aggregate of industry projections, then you have an idea, and those projections come in faster. You have more time to use them. You have more time to build out your lineup. So most pros that I know are using an aggregate of industry, or they have like serious computing power. Like there's a couple guys that I know that have some Amazon Azure set up and some AI set up to build out some really smart stuff and simulate tournaments. But that's a whole other can of worms. When you're building projections, though, like it's such a wide subject, but I think most people, when they look at projections and they look at a median projection, the problem that they will have is they'll say, like yesterday, for instance, Chovy had a projection over at the site of 83.84. It's like, all right, so what does that really mean? A projection of 83.84 can mean two things. One, it can either mean that is an extrapolation of a baseline against some number of variables. So like here's his base kills, deaths, etc. And then we can take some number of variables, whatever it is, and then apply it to that. And then you can extrapolate that out to a projection, right? So that's one way. That's what we call a baseline projection. And then there's another way where I use a range of outcomes model, which I am actually simulating things out, or I am taking historical models and historical data, and I'm building out standard deviations so that we can find what their range is. Like here is their 25th percentile projection, here's a 75th percentile, and then we can build up a Bayesian graph and we can get the middle, and then there's a median projection. But in both ways, a projection is never exactly meant to be precise. It's meant to be accurate. So it's meant to be close to the most likely thing that a player is going to have happen if everything goes the way that you would expect it to go. But it hardly ever, like, it's very, very hard to have a projection set be precise. And that's not necessarily what you're aiming for. You're trying to get an idea of what a player is capable of. And a good projection set is going to tell you what their ceiling, what their floor is, so that you understand what their range is. And that's the really, really important part, is median projections only tell you a likely outcome. It doesn't tell you all of the outcomes that a player has.
And, I think you bring up a good point, and it was something that I wanted to touch on, and that's that a lot of projections are done as median projections, specifically in other sports, football, basketball, and people sometimes are building their GPP lineups on median projections when that's not always what you want to do. Sometimes you want to go to that range of outcome and you want to build it off of that ceiling, or certainly incorporate it. I think Joe Holka had a really good thread on Twitter before the NFL season that talked about that. Now, for cash games, I think the median projection is something that makes a lot more sense. I think esports is a little bit different, specifically, at least in League of Legends, where, the projections that I do are all in-win projections. That's all I'm projecting, because that's all that matters. If you're rostering a team that lost, like Team WE, Nathan's going to tell you that doesn't work out really well. And I had a lot of WE too. That did not go very well for me, which was okay at that point because I had a lot of RA. I had more RA, and that didn't go well for me either. One of the things that I'll say, though, too, is that nothing ever goes precisely the way that you think it's going to go. So there's no way that you're just going to have a whole set of projections that's going to be 100% correct. I went back and looked at my projections for Damwon, for example, and they were almost within 2 points, 3 points, 5 points of everybody, with the exception of Canyon. And Canyon was 30 points off. Somehow what everybody else was doing what they were supposed to do, what they typically do, but he didn't. The Canyon projection sucked. Okay. But overall, I think you get the idea of what the team was supposed to do. And Canyon had a bad game. He could just as easily have had a ceiling game where, you had somebody like, let's say Rookie a couple weeks back when they played RA, and the guy went for 110, 120. Nobody projected him for that.
That one guy with the one-off captain did. The guy swept the GPP with a rookie one-off captain. It was a sight to see.
Yeah, and he had several of those. I mean, but that's to say that like when you're looking at the projections, the idea is not necessarily, and when we go through the cash game projections and stuff like that later in the show, the idea is like this is the team that's supposed to score the most points. It's not this is how many points that they're going to score, and it's not that they are going to be the team that scores the most points, because you can't predict that the team's going to just say, you know what, there's one tower left. We could probably push this, but let's reset. Let's hit another Baron, and let's do this all over again. Those things are hard to predict, at least in the median. Those are ceiling game projections, and those things happen circa like FPX at the beginning of the season. Nathan, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, I think like I'm gonna touch back on what you said about like how like building with medians is not always the best idea. I think that with some sports that building with medians and adjusting the way you sort of construct your lineups based on like the probability they hit ceilings, I guess is like a better way to put it than like building with ceiling numbers. Build your whole team with ceiling numbers in like basketball, for example. Like it's not highly likely you're going to hit that 90th percentile outcome in a single player. And like if you do that, you're going to get a lot of weird lineups where like you're just jamming like a Svi, whatever that guy is, Svi on the Pistons before he was injured. The guy that would just like Svi, really long M last name. He's like a 3K guy, but his ceiling is like in the high 20s, low 30s every single slate that he played, even with like 16 to 20 minutes, because he just like either hits 9 threes or he doesn't. And like if you're building with just ceilings, you're going to end up jamming like way a lot of him. Now, let's say with esports, I've never done anything with esports that's not just like only using in-win projections.
So, like, my question though is, don't you just push a button? Isn't that all you do when you're putting together 150 lineups? Don't you just push a button, put it in a CSV, and then hand put all of those in? That's what some people think. Or maybe you just actually enter it in with the CSV. Not everybody knows how to do that, but
Kevin does not know how to do that. I had to do a CSV for him one time. It was fun. He sent me his 2 entries and I had to like combine them, send them back. But yeah, I wish. I end up building a lot more lineups than I need for every sport. And then I run them through some sort of algorithm or sorting system, or depending on the sport, some different process to give me whatever the top 150 lineups are for that sport, which honestly is probably not the best way to do it. I mean, I don't mind the variance that it brings, but it does bring a ton of variance when you build out like 6,000 lineups and you play the top 150, because you end up with like a crazy amount of like these top plays. Like if there's a guy that's like, I'm trying to think of, well, who was the chalk team last night in NBA? The Hornets, right?
Yeah.
I built out like 6,000 lineups, right? I run them through my process. I return it at like 96% Ubre.
Yeah.
Like it's never going to be like, I'm fine with it because I'm embracing the variance that it's bringing. Because it's not going to be a big deal. Like I'll take the 0 or the whatever, But
to be fair, in a situation like that, like
yeah,
you're still building the top EV lineups that you can build. So your expectation over time is still going to be the same as if you were to have.
Right.
It's going to be like all at once. Blender and I talk about this all the time. But
yeah,
like it's going to be all at once instead of spread out.
How he plays MMA. He's just jamming the top EV uniques, right? Where like he's pretty much gonna very much get totally dusted, or he's gonna win.
Yeah,
and that's the way that I play pretty much everything. I play a lot of tennis, right? And I'm with tennis, I either take like the top 1 through 10 or I don't.
Well, and I think that there's a misconception that some people have that, building these lineups is just clicking a button. In fact, there is a misconception because people have said that very comment. But, I'm a notorious hand builder, the number 1 hand builder in the entire country, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
But I have used optimizers, and, I've talked to you about that whole process, and specifically in NFL, where it's just really an absolute pain to build 150 lineups. I've done it. It sucks. But you're still running all these different sets and trying to figure out what the optimizer is going to put in there in terms of, the player pool that you've selected, what you've liked. And then you're adjusting the percentages because like, it's cool that like you have 80% George Kittle, but when you have 80% George Kittle and then like 80% Rob Gronkowski, it's probably not optimal. So you have to adjust some of those projections, the median projections, the ceiling projections, whatever the case is, and then some of those exposures. So it's not this really instantaneous. Like, look, I tell anybody, Nathan's a perfect example. You weren't building 150 lineups for golf and MMA and tennis and all these things to start off with. You started off building quarter entries, mini maxes.
Yeah, mini maxes. The nickel on FanDuel is still my best friend. So it's a great place to learn how to play daily fantasy sports. Like the best place to learn, because if you don't know how to properly leverage a lineup, you're gonna break even, because that contest is like beyond soft. But like, you're not gonna do well. You could probably jam just like the top 150 optimals in that contest and do well, but like no other contest can you.
That's why Blender prefers to play like the $3 and $9 in NFL.
Yeah,
because like throwing that kind of like, if he throws in 100 lineups into the $9 into the slant, the ownership's like, it's so much softer than throwing 20 into like the 33 or 20 into like the 40 or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, Nathan knows all about throwing a bunch of lineups into the slant and not throwing them into other contests.
My biggest mistake of my life was I went on a pretty severe downswing. It might have been week 5 or 6, like before the week 5 or 6, and I forgot to build lineups, and I was tutoring. I was in the middle of tutoring like SAT test prep from like 11 to 1. And I just was like, all right, I'm going to throw my lineups in the slant and in the $5, and I'm not going to deposit. Because I was like, my balance had run low, and I was like, not going to deposit to play the Millie Maker. I would have banked, which is, I would have, just $1 million.
I mean, he won $50,000. He won $50,000. It was okay.
Which is great. It's not going to change my life forever.
No, it's not $1 million. You're right.
$1 million, but yeah, I mean, like it was rough. I would have won by like 5 points, something like that.
I mean, that's just one of those things. Like the mental side of DFS that's the hardest part.
If I like hadn't been playing it like normally, I think it would have been like, I would have rationalized it and be like, whatever, I was never going to play it anyways. But it was like the first week or something like that I hadn't played it.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. That is the stone worst. It's when you're like, I always make it a point, like, because I always try to play I try to play any contest that is under 1,000 entries and at least 100x like my buy-in. That's pretty much like my cutoff. I don't want to play really anything that is not that. Sure. Because the way that I play, like, I know I'm going to lose like 96, 97% of the time. But, if I win, I want to have that payoff. So right. I'm usually relegated to like, especially in smaller sports, anything over $100. And like the day that I play like the $20 3 max or something, and I bank, and I'm like, so yesterday we couldn't have had this yesterday. That would have been great, but that's always the worst. That's the worst.
And that always happens in baseball too. Like your lineup just goes off the next day, like the day, like you've chased them for a week, and then you just decide, hey, this is going to be enough is enough. Enough is enough. It's like chasing Damwon. I mean, I chased them all last season. I chased RA all last season, and then the 555. I think it was in spring, the spring 555. I decided not to play RA with Damwon, and that was like the nut lineup. And John went into the chat. He's like, "Yo, it's Emmerich season. You got RA and Damwon," and I'm like, "I didn't play him. I've been drinking for 3 hours. I'm going to sleep now. It's over." So
it's just brutal.
Yeah, so it's not $1 million loss, but it was a $50,000 loss. So.
It's the same idea though. It's the you do something for so long, and like you just don't play them. It's like Invictus Gaming. I've played IG every slate they've been on, except I didn't slam.
And I said it last night in the chat too. I said it in the chat. I
wouldn't have won anyway, though, so it doesn't matter. I would not have run the 4-3, and I would have lost. So it's okay. I don't hate it.
Sure.
I mean, I still do hate it, but I don't hate it as much as I could have. I wouldn't have soloed with anything. The Invictus team slot was just the nuts. So I would never have won.
This conversation is actually why I don't play qualifiers for anything. Because like my big thing is like, if I'm gonna play a qualifier, I'm gonna play a qualifier every single day for like the entire season. Because the one day that you don't play a qualifier, you're gonna do super duper well.
Oh yeah,
and I'll tell you, playing the qualifier in esports, the worst qualifier. I mean, that tournament was garbage. I can't imagine people that just chase. Like, I'm sorry, Nathan. I'm not singling you out here. I didn't mean to. At least I guess I am. I'm attacking you here, But like, I don't even know. Like, you probably would have had to finish. Like, I mean, I finished third, and I turned like a 5K profit. Like, it wasn't good. Like,
Shout
you have
out
to
to
finish
Gordon.
top 5. You know. Yeah, but yeah, Gordy, like he came out okay. He came out okay, probably.
It's similar to tennis.
I'm so happy about Gordy hitting that because he took me out to a nice dinner because of it, and like we got to go have some Wagyu. That was nice.
Oh, cool, dude. That's Gordy. Gordy plays pretty well. My dogs.
Yeah,
they're
it wouldn't be
in the room.
so talking about projections, the other thing, and we mentioned it briefly, but range of outcomes, other data that you're using, and those type of tools. I know, James, you have a lot of stuff on your site that is very different than what a lot of people offer. I mean, if you wanted to share your screen and show some of that, totally okay. Or if you just wanted to talk about it and some of the different things that you guys have come up with and how you guys utilize that, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Let me share my screen here. Share that screen.
There we go.
All right. Yeah. Hey, look, skill capped. It's like I'm trying to get better at League of Legends. So anyway, these are the projections that you'll see on the site. Like usually it'll open up with stacks. But if we're talking about like the things that I do differently, you can see that like there are a lot of tabs here. And it's not just like, oh, here's the projections and that's fine because I have these projections. But you can also make it so that you can see. So you guys have been talking about in-win projections, right? Mm-hmm. So on my site, the thing that I wanted to do is make it so that I could say, okay, so these are based on Vegas odds, but say that you wanted to see what would happen if Damwon lost and KWF won. So like you can go in, you can actually change those things, and you can see what the projection set would be in that case. And obviously, now Teddy is up here and blah, blah, blah. So like you can actually change the way that the projections look based on what you think is going to happen or based on what you hope is going to happen, right? But then the other thing you can see, like for prize picks, you can see what the kills and deaths projections and all that cool stuff. But one of the major things that I think that I do differently is, again, this is not just base rates. So most everything that I do is going to take into account either matchups or historical info or both. But so this, you can see like Hope in this matchup against Zing, he's getting a 1% defensive adjustment here based on the matchup that he's going up against. Get a 7% upgrade for Teddy, and this is based on who is going to be winning and losing too. So you can see all that kind of stuff over in the fantasy matchup matrix. So like allowed in losses and allowed in wins. When JWG loses, it's a 13% boost to jungle, it's a 15% boost to mid, yada, yada, yada. So I have that. I have defensive stuff, and then I also have range of outcomes. So this is showing you how often players hit certain fantasy point thresholds. Like Teddy hits 20 plus overall 65% of the time, 97% in wins, 28% in losses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like if you have seen my site and if you have seen the other models I have on my site for other sports and you haven't seen the esports ones, think the same thing. I just do a lot of range of outcome stuff because I want people to see that Hope has a projection of 98, but if you go into the range of outcomes, then you can see where he is going to likely be. So actually, let's take Teddy here, right? So for Teddy, if KDF is going to win, he has a projection of 86. That's great to know. If we were building just from projections and just from medians, you would probably have a lot of him if you thought the KDF was going to win. But you also need to understand that median projection doesn't mean near as much if you don't understand what else he can do. So Teddy overall is pretty good. 31% chance of scoring 35 plus fantasy points overall, both in wins and losses. So this is the average. That's pretty good. That's better than guys like Showmaker. It's better than Chobi. This is a pretty good number overall. But you can also see over here that like in losses, he only hits that range 2.7% of the time. In wins, he still only hits it 53% of the time. So there's a 53% chance that he's not going to score 35 plus fantasy points per game. There's a 46% chance that he's not going to hit that. You want him to hit his ceiling? Okay, so his ceiling, let's call it 45 plus. He's only hitting that 19% of the time. The most likely thing that you're going to get is somewhere in this 20 to 25, which is then going to translate to somewhere between like 70 to 90 fantasy points, leaning towards that top because we're dealing with in-win projections here. So when you build out a projection, like you can use base stats. I have all the base stats here. You can see player and wins here. Here's the base stats for ruler. Here's base stats for showmaker, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the fantasy points per game here. But that stuff doesn't matter if you're not applying other variables to it and if you're not applying it based on what their actual range is going to be. Chovy, like if you were building, we'll talk about cash game stuff later, right?
Yeah.
But if you go into range of outcomes and you just want to build for cash games, then what I have usually done, actually, I usually do in projections. For cash games, a lot of the time, I change everybody to an underdog. So then I sort by largest, smallest. And then you can see who has the greatest floor. So Zika, this is obviously like a short sample thing. We don't have base skills, we don't have adjustments. But Ruler has a really good floor. Ice has a really good floor. These guys have great floors and projections. And then if you want to see for GPPs, then you can change everybody to favorites. You can say, okay, let's say that everybody is going to be winning. Why can't I not do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good rule here in talking about the range of outcomes is like you wanted to play Gen G yesterday because they felt safe, minus 1,200, aside from like late COVID scratches, that all aside, but they just didn't have like the range of outcomes there for the entire team was just not there in comparison to RA, in the comparison to the ill-fated WE and Shanks, our boy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact, like that's even without projections, a lot of that comes from if you just like look at Vegas totals, which I'm sure obviously James is adjusting for, right?
Oh yeah,
like it's 100% part of it. So
actually, I build bottom up for esports because I think that I can beat a lot of the markets.
Okay.
So I don't build top down for esports. I build top down for NFL and I build top down for NHL.
Okay.
Because those two markets, I don't think that I can beat. But like MLB, I think I can beat, and esports for sure. Like the lines offered for Valorant esports are hilarious. They're so bad. After I started building models, I was like, what is these guys have no idea how to build projections. Mark has no idea. So I'm pretty confident in that kind of stuff. But like speaking of that, you can look into the fantasy matchups, and this is kind of like what I use to project kills and stuff like that.
Sure.
But you can see like we was a good play yesterday. Like they were. JDG, man, they give up the most kills to opponents. They give up the most fantasy points against to opponents. Like they were in a really, really good spot. And sure, they're underdogs, but the team efficiency is relatively high. It was a close game. CKPMR diff is kind of like it's an in-house proprietary thing, but it basically says if it's a closer number, then it's a higher chance of having a really bloody game. So like Team We had good efficiency, should be a close game, high kills allowed, high fantasy points allowed. There you go. Like Team We was a great play yesterday, and they just didn't pan out. And that it is what it is.
Yeah.
The best that you can do, not only in DFS but also in life, is just put yourself in position to benefit from good situations. That's the best you can do. Like, and then the rest of it is just like if it works out, then that's awesome. Hopefully you get the nut outcome. And if you don't, then you still put yourself in position to get paid out.
Yeah, and I think those close games are something that kind of just, we've talked about it at great length in the Discord in terms of like, bad teams versus bad teams can be bad games, but they can be bad games where nobody's going to finish.
Yeah.
I bet the over-unders on, just even ERLs. So I'm betting all during the week, and they had a lot of close games in the Ultra League in terms of like talent-wise. It was a bad day for the unders 2 days ago. The totals were 52, 40, 39, 34, and 44. So it was a rough day. It was a rough day for me. I was on a lot of the unders there. They graded out well, but the range of outcomes did not work in my favor. So but targeting those type of games will yield you those type of results. I mean, it was like I think it was like a Vitality XL game last summer when pre-Crown Shots arrival. Like, not that he made them any better, but like those teams, they were just so bad that the game never ended, and it broke the slate. It was the first game, and those are things that you just absolutely have to target. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that kind of stuff, people try to say that like that kind of thing, oh, you have to know the sport to be able to find that stuff. Like, you absolutely do not need to know the sport to find that kind of stuff. Granted, there are some things that you can learn about esports, and it's one of the reasons why I like building projections for it that definitely make things a little bit better. But you don't have to know that kind of stuff. If you know just a general rule of thumb that a bad team versus bad team is either going to be a bad game or neither team knows how to win, then there you go. Like in traditional sports, I think a lot of the time you'll see a bad team versus a bad team, and most people will assume that it's going to go under. And I think that's a fair assumption. That's probably like the more likely outcome. But the higher EV outcome, if you focus on it, is bad team versus bad team, allowing whatever the other team wants. You still need to remember that these are professionals. Like, they know they're top 1% in the world at whatever they're doing. So even if they are a bad team, they still absolutely annihilate most of the world at what they're doing. So if there's an opportunity for them to take advantage of, then that still is an opportunity for them to do well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's hop into like the slate that's coming up from a betting standpoint. Unless you have anything that you wanted to add to the projections data piece, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add one thing. I think the greatest misconception that a lot of people have in terms of sorry, my dogs are trying to get into the room in terms of daily fantasy sports and just projections and betting in general is that if you do something and it doesn't work out, that it was wrong. And I think that like being in the gambling community for so long and like playing poker before I played DFS, like you really have to learn that when you're making decisions, like you cannot be like short-term results oriented. Like if you go and you do a bunch of things for like a year and like you just lose the whole year, like maybe you're doing it wrong. But like if you go in and you do something like play Team WE last night and they lose, like was it wrong? No, not necessarily. I mean, like there's a world where it could be wrong.
Well, look, and if it's at a point where it hurts you and affects your life that you played it wrong, you're playing at the wrong stakes. Like you shouldn't. Yeah. That's the big thing, and I think that's the problem that some people have. Not just what you're saying, but they're playing above where they need to be playing, and as a result, it hurts. It's okay. It's all right. It's not as bad. You got 2 dogs, not 4 today.
Yeah, they're in the other room. But no, what I was gonna say is yeah, and I think that like to quote like what Mike was saying, yeah, like was it yesterday? Was it this morning? Honestly, I don't even know. Last night,
exhausting, man.
When he was saying like people expect when they pay for a service for those calls, those projections to be right, and then when they aren't right, they get really mad, and it's because someone's paying for a service, playing way above their means, and then when they lose the X% that they're gonna lose, just a given, then they get really mad at the person they're paying for advice, even if it was sound advice, because they see it as
and it's just what happened today. Like I guess there's a unsettled debt between Googs and NBA Live, and he's like, bro, I paid you this, I didn't even make this when I bet this, I ended up losing money. Well, like, look, that's most people are going to lose money in the long term, but you have to put yourself in the right position and play at stakes that you can actually be one of the people that's profitable. And that's what you're talking about. But that's a perfect example of it.
I will also add to that like, if when you put together a lineup and like you hit the enter button, if you get that like tinge in your stomach of like, ooh, man, I hope this does well, like you're probably playing with too much money. Like I think that there is a difference, because I used to do it. I used to play way above my means. But I think there's a difference between like being excited and that like nervous excited, like, oh man, yeah, I think this is nuts. Like I hope this is nuts. And like that, if I lose this, like it's gonna hurt me. Nervousness. Yeah. And you really need to be honest with yourself about that. And like I'll be the first person to tell anybody in DFS to like just stop playing for a while and just like cut back and sit back for a little while. I do believe that everybody can be good at DFS. I think that everybody can develop the skills to be good at DFS, but there are some people that really need to be honest with themselves about like their skill level at the time and really work themselves up. Like Nathan starting with like the 5 cent or like the quarter arcade or whatever. Like if you start there, and Bro, who's on Twitter, Chunk Yardage, like he started with the quarter arcade too, and he's so good. And like there's nothing wrong with starting low and building your bankroll over the course of a year or 2 years or whatever. And even if it is in DFS or in betting or whatever, like just be honest with yourself and understand that the results in DFS happen over time. They don't happen right away. They happen over time, like a year, 2 years, whatever. If you're consistent, if you're playing plus EV stuff, then it'll pay off eventually, but it doesn't pay off right away.
Well, and not only that, but like, look, I guarantee you, like, look, I've played quite a bit on slates on a regular basis, but I guarantee you, if you're not doing it, go play the mini max if you're still able to. I guarantee you, even just putting $75 in or $150 in, you'll get, because you just have so many outs, it'll make watching the game, if that's what you're doing it for, still fun. Like I do it for showdowns, or I did it for showdowns because I suck at showdowns. I just donate for showdowns. So I was like, you know what? Let's just do it like this, because this is still a way that I can have fun. I can get a lot of lineups in, and I can enjoy, the NFL product on a primetime game.
Yeah, I think also one of the quotes that I can't remember who said it. Might have been Bunner that said it, honestly, but I don't know. Is that there's a lot of people that played DFS that probably would be some of the best people out there if they didn't go broke playing above their means.
Mm-hmm.
People that just like, if you go into playing like a bunch of like mid-stake stuff, high-stake stuff, even if you're insanely good and you just hit like your 20x buy-in downswing like instantly, you're obviously not picking the keyboard back up and jumping back into fantasy sports like anytime soon. So there's definitely like a situation where you get a lot of people that would be good just playing way other means at first that don't ever get to be good. So that's definitely, play within your means is obviously the big takeaway. Build up slowly. It takes months, years, whatever you want to take it. But yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's hop into the slate. This is not the day that we want. This is the day that's too small still, isn't it? All right, so let's start it off tomorrow. First and foremost, we've got the NS Bro game. It's not even bettable right now. It's still off the board. There's a lot of COVID situations going on with that. I don't want any part of that from a DFS standpoint, but we'll talk about it. DRX Hanwha Life. We've got Hanwha Life here at a plus 125. In terms of the over-unders on these games, we're at 22.5, which is pretty standard right now for the LCK. James, I'm gonna send it over to you. I will let you know, if you've ever listened to me, I hate Sam D. I think he's like the biggest trash ADC in the world. I will tell you that I probably am gonna bet Hanwha here, but let's hear what you have to say about this game.
I don't mind betting Hanwha. So a lot of the time when I'm looking at like actually betting sides, I'll use something that I have that's called an ELO tech model, which I posted in the Discord, and like you guys saw that before we jumped on the show anyway. But I have NS is not, or DRX is not that much better than HLE. 233 is a bit too high. I only have them basically as a pick 'em in terms of where they are in the league. If you look at their win rates against individual teams, so DRX has a 33% win rate so far this split against top teams in the league and a 66% against bottom teams. But HLE has a 36% win rate against top teams and just 42% win rate against bottom teams. So HLE, it's also worth saying that HLE has had a really, really tough schedule. They've actually had the toughest schedule in the league so far. Played 11 games against top-rated teams. So I think that HLE here, they're much more worth the bet than DRX. I'd much prefer to take HLE just because I think that HLE has had a harder schedule. And DRX is not automatic against worse teams anyway. It's not like there's some 80 to 90% win rate against lower half teams anyway. So yeah, I'd much prefer HLE.
Well, and I think, look, even at the plus 125, I think HLE is close enough. I do think DRX, is warranted as a favorite. Maybe this is a little bit heavy on that side of things. I do like DRX, and I think to some extent we do have to look at the teams and not necessarily just look at how they've performed, but how we thought they were going to perform and kind of meld those two things together. And I know that your data kind of does that. But I think an example of that would have been RA IG. We thought IG was going to be better, but everything we saw was bad. We thought RA was going to be worse, but they looked better. And then we saw what happened. But in terms of HLE and DRX, one of the things that I know Nathan absolutely adores is he adores LCK underdogs. And this is a 5-game slate with 3 LPL games. This game is going to go absolutely under-owned. People are not going to want a piece of it. There are other underdogs that you can get probably that fit into your lineups. Nathan, how much HLE are you going to slam?
So I do have a problem with League of Legends in general as a daily fantasy sport, just because I have some very severe biases that I let get the best of me. One of them is that DRX is a trash team. They've obviously won 4 in a row now, something ridiculous.
Ever since you said it, since you took the stand and have declared them bad.
Yeah,
since you declared them bad. Maybe he was even on this show.
However, my takes are unfaltering. I will continue to be biased for no reason, probably. Also because, as Spellscasty says there, LCK dogs are barking. I doubt I get to a lot of LCK games. I haven't worked out everything yet, but if I go look at totals and stuff, I'm sure the 3 LPL are more enticing. But if anything, I guess HLE is one of those teams that you just have to get some of.
It is worth saying in the models, because I was waiting for Justin to run them. And I even messaged him. I was like, I need you to run projections so that I can have them for the show. But he just finished running them, and in the fantasy matchups, Hanwha Life has a significant advantage in CKPMR, and they have the better team efficiency. So DRX, I loved DRX for a little while, and then last year people were still liking DRX, and my models were just this team really sucks. Why do people like this team? And it's just continued. So I'm certainly. I think that the kills against is a little bit low for an LPL matchup, but HLE they're a great dog.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this so HLE doesn't necessarily always have these high kill games, and I think if you're just looking at them within this split, that 25 kill game against Nongshim to start off the season really kind of does skew the projections. There are 14 kill per win team otherwise. And then DRX has a couple games against Genji that kind of skew their projection as well. But this goes back to one of those situations, and I think almost everything in the LCK fits within that, is that the teams are not that far apart. It's a 10-team league, just like the LEC, just like the LCS. It's not like the LPL where there's 17 teams. So they're pretty close. DRX is maybe a middle of the pack team. I think HLE is closer to the bottom, but the difference between those two is not much. There's a very real possibility that these games go 12-9, 12-9, 12-9, and we get a 3-game series. Nobody's viable. But I think we can probably, squeak out 1 or 2 games, and if those are the 2 games that, whether it be HLE or DRX gets, that are 20 kill wins and then gets a 10 kill loss. They can very easily find themselves into an optimal lineup at sub 5% ownership, because everybody's attention is going to be on some of these other banger games that we'll go to at this point.
I want to say one more thing to back that up. Hanwha Life has only reached 40 plus fantasy points per average on 7.56% of their games in the sample.
They're definitely not.
It's just the lowest. It's the lowest of any team on the slate. So I would say keep them to a 3-man. I probably wouldn't captain HLE.
Yeah,
about the upside.
I think Sam D is the only guy that does. It's despite the fact that he's trash. He could be the guy that does it, because it is funneled through him, and that is certainly how they play, and that's how a lot of the LCK teams play. They're great for the team slot. They're great for the ADC. and then you just have to hope that you get the other guy right. Or maybe you one off the other slot. Maybe you just do a Sam D in a team slot. I don't know. But we've got Ultra Prime here with Anyone's Legend. Ultra Prime mega favorites here, minus 305, which is just absurd for a team of this quality. But the one thing that the books didn't know, but is a fact, is that the worst player in the LPL is making a reemergence in the mid lane. It's going to be Forge. Forge is absolute trash for Anyone's Legend, and I think that Ultra Prime is a lock to win this game as a result. They're a super bloody team. They're going to be super popular. Elk has a ridiculous, I think, 40 to 45% kill share. Nathan, what do you think about this game?
Now, as prefaced before, I'm a man of biases.
Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I think that realistically, Anyone's Legend is a terrible team. As all the odds suggest and as models suggest, that they're pretty bad. And Forge is obviously not great, especially with this team. That being said, they are Rogue Warriors, and once a Rogue Warriors fan, always a Rogue Warriors fan, I think, is the way that goes. Yes, Ian. I actually make all the projections look exactly how I want them to look. All the bias comes through. I actually just click random numbers and just hope for the best.
I don't know how the 200-point WE games didn't come through yesterday, because, I mean, you showed me your projections, and, like, Shanks was at 200, View was at 225, and, like, it was no doubt, like, that they popped up even in your cash lineups.
But so I guess I will, obviously, I'm the guy that plays all the dogs, all the Fave Dog and the Dog lineups. That being said, the ceilings between these two teams are pretty similar. Whatever I have for in wins on these two teams is pretty damn close. To where, like, the total team, like, 5-stack, like, if you were able to 5-stack between an Anyone's Legend stack in wins and like an Ultra Prime wins, is a difference of like 1.4 for me. Like, it's very, very close. So I can't endorse going all in on Anyone's Legend. That would be terrible financial advice for everybody. But I can say that they're worth a shot. As is any team on the slate, always. So that's my take on that game. I don't have like a definitive betting take. If I had to bet someone, it wouldn't be Anyone's Legend. But I don't think you can pay the price for Ultra Prime. So
no, I think if you're betting this, I think you can take the plus 1.5, minus 150 at Anyone's Legend to take a game. I think you can take the plus 220. I don't think that they win this, but that's just a heavy price to pay. Like, I don't think Ultra Prime is like this like prime team. I think that they're, we give a lot of grief to OMG as like a gatekeeper team, but I think Ultra Prime is a step below them. What do you think, James?
Yeah, they're definitely not OMG gatekeeper status. OMG, man, every single year. We were talking about this earlier.
We're gonna talk about them. Let's not go too far into OMG. Like, they're coming up.
But yeah, I mean, they're not an OMG, but they do have so far in the season 62.5% win rate against bottom half teams, which checks out as a gatekeeper. AL has a 50% win rate against bottom half teams, so I don't think that it's insane to think that they could step up here. But when you look at the relative strength of these teams, I have Up as the 9th best team in the LPL right now, and I have Legends as the 17th best. So they're really, really bad. Relatively, they're doing very, very bad to their competition. So I actually think that taking Up on the money line makes sense. I think they win this game pretty easily. But when it comes to projections, I agree with Nathan. I think that for the most part, both these teams have about the same upside. Legends has 17% chance of averaging 40 plus in wins. Up has a 16% chance. So that's pretty close. It's a better matchup for Anyone's Legend. It's a better matchup against Ultra Prime. So Ultra Prime in losses is averaging 19.3 kills allowed. But the team efficiency for Anyone's Legend is less than that of Ultra Prime. So it's kind of a trade-off. I have Ultra Prime as the best stack on the slate, but I do think that it's fair to say, like, when we were talking about bad teams versus bad teams, Ultra Prime is a middle-of-the-pack team. Anyone's Legend is a bad team, but things happen where a team botches a Baron fight or something like that, and then you have the team with the higher upside matchup winning. So I mean, I'm pretty good on taking Ultra Prime here, but I don't mind taking anyone's Legend in GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, look, I will say that in my projections, I have Elk and Betty as the number 1 and number 2 guys in terms of wins.
Yeah, I have Elk
highest scoring guys. Like I have Betty 1 point higher than Elk. Betty's like 2-1 projection is also pretty high because just they seem to, you know, historically score a lot of points in losses. Not necessarily always in this split, but just Betty as a whole, anyone's Legend. Rogue Warriors just as a whole. But like you can look at the, like, you know, what's on my screen here. Up just puts a lot of kills in. I think that there is some merit though, and we'll talk about this in just a second. Getting away from Up, because there are games that, you know, could potentially be as bloody, not as often. But when we look at anyone's Legend, if anybody remembers these Weibo games of like 8-4 and 6-13. God, I hated those games. You know, they happen. So the other games that we are talking about, we've got BLG at minus 2,500, TT at plus 900, bringing in a new lineup, though. Bringing in Chieftain, bringing in UCal. This team sucks. Are they going to breathe life into it? James, I'm going to send it to you because Nathan says he's not an LOL knower, as Spell would say. So what do you feel like TT, like would you sprinkle a little bit here at the plus 900? Do you think Chieftain and UCal can bring this one home, or would you take the plus 1.5 plus 255, or would you do what Elliot Carney said and just go ahead and donate that money to charity and don't bet it?
I think UCal is pretty good. From what we've seen in the past, I think UCal is pretty good. I don't think he's enough to bring this team back from the depths. But I think he's pretty good. I just don't think the models hate TT. I have them as the largest difference in ELO. I have BLG as the 4th best team in the LPL. TT is 14th. So I mean that's 10 team difference. It's just hard to overcome that kind of thing. If I go and look at win rates against specific teams, BLG has, well, they've only had one match against bottom half teams, but 100% win rate. TT has an 11% win rate against top half teams. It's such a hard match for TT to overcome. But UCal's pretty good, and this is a very, I think this is a very mid-strong patch that we're still in. So maybe, I mean, he might be able to. They would need to do some weird stuff and have him really take over the game and really influence the game. But I just don't think it's gonna. It's hard. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you get one of these lines and you get a, you know, coming off of a break like this and with some significant changes, at least to the roster, you know, go ahead, throw 10, go throw 20, throw like, you know, a tenth of a unit at it. If it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, that's totally okay. We'll talk about it in DFS, but I don't think I want any part of TT, even if UCal and Chieftain do bring this team to a certain, you know, winning level. I don't think New is ever playable. I think New is probably the worst top in the entire LPL, and I've said that plenty of times. Nathan,
I can add that I think I would take shots on the TT team if it was against like a majority of teams. There's like a couple of teams that I wouldn't, and BLG is just one of those teams that's just like very solid, just like all around. They're just a good team of good players.
When I put in the in-win projections for them, UCal is the top projection. I mean,
TT has the highest ceiling in my like actually just kidding. OMG does, but they're up there. OMG does just because they're OMG. That's just how they are. And Shanji's projection is broken at all times. But TT's up there. Like they have a ridiculous, like Southwind just has stupid stats from when he wins. From both like the last year, but also like from like however many years back, because he was with the IG team that just like dunked on everybody.
Yo, look, I'm worried about our boy Elliot here. This guy like was so upset about RA losing that he went to the bar at like 7, 8 in the morning. He was drinking cocktails. The Gen G series wasn't even over. He can't spell anything correct. He's trying to bet people Western style on all faves parlays. Like Elliot, have you made your lineups? Please tell me you've made your lineups already, and maybe send them to myself or Nathan to review to make sure that they're okay. Okay. I'm just worried about you. I've made plenty of lineups in a full day drinking binge that have not looked good, and so I'm just trying to be a friend here. Yeah, but look, hey, Nathan, what you're saying, like I don't care what he did at IG. He's not on IG. He doesn't have rookie. He doesn't have the shy. Sure, he has puff. Like it doesn't matter to me. Like this TT team is playable in the 15. It's playable in the 5. I would expect that nobody has it in the 333, and you probably shouldn't.
Nobody will have it in 333. Nobody will take that.
No, they will be 0% owned. If they're 1% owned, it's going to be Elliot Carney, and it's going to be like.
And he's going to have like Captain and Frigid because he's just he's there.
It's going to be just awful, and like I said, I think if the GDP was a lot bigger, you could take it. I think it was like a 10,000 entry tournament. Like there's a lot more merit to playing TT. But like, it's like what 3,400 people in it, or like 2,800, something like that. Like,
yeah, it's not even a large field GPP.
Yeah, I think it's 31.
Stop. Ian, have you ever played a dog in your life? Have you
No.
ever played a dog in your life?
He has, and I can quote him on this. It's when the dog has more players that fuck than the.
Yeah, like hey, like James, do you have that in any of your models? Like players that fuck, like that.
Yeah. I build in a back end. How heavy does this person fuck stat? And it's just like it goes from like Elk, who is like the top fucker, to all the way down to like, let's see who's on the bottom of the fuck list.
Right now, Showmaker.
Cold or on.
Oh, cold.
Those are some bad.
Sam D.
It's actually probably like Bay, who is now in the PCS. He's going to be playing for PSG Talon. You can bet on them if you want to. They're a heavy favorite. But Bay certainly didn't fuck at all. He just fucked you.
Yeah, Elioya down is I think Ian's scale. And then when it comes to golf, it goes from who does Ian like every single week? I have to go look at the messages here. He plays the same guy every week, I feel like.
I do too in golf. When I play Kevin Na. Kevin Na is my guy. For some reason, he wins a lot of tournaments when I don't play golf, and so I've just stopped playing because he would win when I didn't. I'd play all season, I would stop, and then just like we talked about earlier, Kevin Na would win a tournament. Enough about TT. Let's talk about the game, the real game.
With the
is this the game that you split? Like, is this OMG versus Victory 5? Is Victory 5 as good as some people are thinking that they are? Is Victory 5 bad? Victory 5 almost lost, almost got throttled, almost just got whopped by RA. And RA has looked bad ever since they threw that second game. OMG shocked the world, made me and Nathan a ton of money when they beat TES. But is TES even good? Like, do we know anything about either of these teams other than our boy Cream? He fucks. That's all I know.
So far, TES is bad.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I have TES as the 15th best team in the LPL.
They have played terribly.
Bad.
Oh man, they're on all of my best ball teams. So
it's okay. I'm the guy that has Sandbox in all of my LCK teams. So
there you go.
You got Finn in all your LEC teams. Like you've got some really bad teams, but you've just been running really good for how.
Yes, such is my life. Just run hot. It's just a fish on a heater. That's just the life.
You're not like Alan, who will be on the show tomorrow. This guy has a full stack of EDG, has a full stack of Rogue, has a full stack of like just he drafted Johnson with the last overall pick. This guy is going to talk to you, me, and everybody about his best ball stats tomorrow. I'm just going to plug that. But back to this OMG Victory 5. First guy talks can tell me which way to go here. I'm thinking I'm going OMG, man.
I think you got to go. You got to go OMG.
I think it's a weird. I mean, like you can. I think it's one of those spots where you're going to see both teams just like this. This is the game that has the ownership. Like like all the V5 players are gonna be like 20 to 30% owned, and all the OMG players are gonna be like 18 to 25% owned. Because like everyone loves V5 this year, and everyone loves OMG just always for some reason. It also like obviously has all the players that fuck, as well as all the guys with the ceilings. Like Fodek has like a stupid ceiling. Rookie has shown to show. Rookie has like had the one-off game. He generally doesn't, but he has shown that he can. And then like everyone on OMG just has like stupid stats and wins.
So, but I mean, I think the problem that you're going to run into is, at least from Victory 5, you know, the other team that people want to play is going to be up. And I think we've kind of identified that. Not everybody is, you know, going to want to play anybody's legend. And nothing that you can say can make me believe that. But up and Victory 5 do not fit well together. You have to captain, it looks like. Well, no, actually they do. It's just my projections are kind of crazy here. Let's go with something else.
Then you get support captains, it looks like, I guess.
No. There was like 1,000 left there. Hang on.
Let's take a look. But I mean, either way, if they don't fit super well together, then it proves my point even more, and that we're gonna see so much more.
No, you can do.
You can do
plenty.
it.
Yeah, you can do whatever.
But those are anyone's led. Oh no, they're John. You're right.
No, that's who they're playing. Yeah, no, you can play Jungle Captain. People like Jungle Captain. Won yesterday.
Well, Jungle Captain's really good in this patch too.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we've seen in this patch is we have seen people get away from Lee Sin, which I think is kind of the problem in terms of at least carrying a game, getting a lot of kills. I mean, it happens. It happened with Udyr too, but it's just not going to happen all the time. You know, one of the things that we saw yesterday with that RA loss is like, if a team gets Xin and they get Gwen, just go live bet them. I don't care what the odds are. Like you can't fight. Like the Xin goes in, Crescent guards, you can't fight him. Gwen's there, can't fight her. You're all spread out. Like it's a terrible situation, and RA just like gave that to them with an Aphelios, because you're not going to ban that out. It's just a terrible situation.
There's a lot on this patch that is just so cheesy right now, and like for sure Gwen is part of it, but the other part of it is I think I came to this freaking realization because of Cody. And I was so big, and like Emmerich and Nathan, this is when you guys like first joined Discord, when I was just like, Victor sucks in pro play, blah, blah, blah. And then Cody comes at me and he's like, yo, you're super, super critical of coaches in normal sports. Why are you not critical of coaches in esports? And I was like, got me in a box. You got me in a fucking box here. And like, now I have to rethink the way that I look at esports. I have to rethink the way that I look at League of Legends. And like, now, really, I mean, we look at this and we see so many teams that are just doing these things that are really smart. And then you see other teams that are just like still locking in this like rugged bullshit that doesn't work very well and doesn't work together in the meta. And then there's teams like RA that just led over a Xin Zhao Gwen combo, and that game is over. Like, you can't do anything against that combo.
You just have to get so far ahead that it doesn't matter. And they were close to it in that game one. They were really close to it. If they had somehow been able to avoid that team fight and got the pick, then perhaps they would have built a big enough lead that it wouldn't have mattered. You know, going back to the Victor pick, like, and me and Gelati talk about it a lot of times. I think the Victor pick in this, season of League of Legends is very similar to the Gnar pick last year. If you remember, like, Gnar, just like, people know how to play these champions, but they're not proficient in it. And the same thing can be said about Victor. Like, now that guys just played like hundreds of games of Victor at this point, you see these games where it's like, okay, you try and siege, you're behind, but like the Victor hits you for half your damage. And the guys are able to build that. They're able to figure that out. And that's the same thing for Gnar. So, yeah, I mean, like, these different champions that people are getting proficient at. And like, I thought Gwen was gone for a while, but man, she's back. Too. And I don't understand. Like, there's so many things to ban, but like, I would so much rather deal with Caitlyn Lux lane than having to deal with a late game Gwen that could potentially just ruin everything for you.
It's so weird. And like, we'll get back to like the actual DFS part of it in a second, but like, it's just so weird. I was convinced coming into the season that we were going to have the tank top meta back. I was convinced that we were going to have tanks back up in the top lane. And then every single game, it's still Graves, Gwen, like these carries. And I'm like, okay, so every game is just going to be super bloody now. Like we have no damage soakers, we have no engage. We just have people who are just going to kill everything that they see in every single lane. It just like I thought I had such a good pin on it, and then we see all these Graves games, and I was fuming mad the other day in the Discord about that Jana top pick with Smite, not because of the Jana top pick, but because they picked freaking Graves into it, and it just like it brings me back to these people. Like, these coaches don't actually know how to play against the meta for some reason. I don't know how, but they don't, because that was terrible.
I guess maybe like they're surprised that it pops up because it didn't pop up anywhere. But like, you know, even when they knew it was going to happen and Golden Guardians had Gwen and they played it perfectly, they threw, yeah. and God, they threw just as bad as BDS. Like, there is a world where BDS doesn't throw that game against Mad Lions. Ian is completely broke. I'm a rich man, and you know, world hunger is solved because, you know, because they didn't chase Victor in the jungle, and then just so much money changed hands in that game. I don't know. Every time I think about it, it just tilts me. But yeah, look, they're not. We're not going to see that, I don't think, in the LPL, right? Like, we're not going to see one of those games. Like, they're going to play Renekton top. It's going to be okay. We're not going to see a Jana top.
We're not going to see Jana top in the LPL because smart teams will not fall for the idiocracy that happened with that. If a smart team that sees Jana top is just going to pick Tryndamere or Sion or Fiora and just literally wreck the entire lane. And like, there was no. I'm still so mad about this Graves pick. There was no reason to pick Graves in that spot. There's one.
Yeah, well, there was a lot more to it than just that. I don't think the Graves pick is terrible, but it's certainly not the optimal pick to.
I was going to say it's just not optimal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that you're seeing in the meta right now is that the beginning part of this season, it felt like Jinx was super overpowered. But we talked about this on the show with Gelati, that you look at the LCK did not have this like fixation on Jinx. Like, they were more towards Aphelios. And in fact, like, Teddy was the only guy that was playing Jinx. You know, there was a lot of guys in the Discord yesterday that were just absolutely railing on iBoy for his Jinx gameplay yesterday, which look wasn't like super, but you know, they were like, oh, he's missing all these ultimates. It doesn't matter if he hit those rockets; they weren't going to die. You're asking him to hit a 4-screen rocket, like that's going to make a difference? No, like, the problem with the Jinx is you need to get the resets, and she feels incredibly bad from behind. Not that like anybody plays well from behind, but like Jinx especially, if she doesn't get to those items, she's not allowed to scale, and that's what your team is predicated on. Like, you're going to have a lot of problems, and that's why I think you've seen her kind of drop a little bit in priority, specifically for like Aphelios, who just fits into a lot of other team compositions a lot better.
Nathan, do you have opinions on Aphelios versus Jinx?
There's the great comment from Ian there, Jinx Fox. The knowledge that I have is those are two champions that I know. And when I see them, I'm like, those are good guys. I know them. They're I think if you look in like the esports department chat and like you search like the chat history and it's like, what champ is that? Like, it's just me. I just see a picture and I'm just like, I have no idea who that is. Because I never played the game because I never had like a. We talked about this last time, I think. I never had like a computer that could run it. I always I played the first year and a half I played fantasy sports. I just used a 2014 Mac Air.
This guy is the number one esports player in the world, and he doesn't have a computer that can run an esports.
I don't have a good PC right now either. I got like a new MacBook that's like it can run it at least. It runs well. But I don't have a PC. When we're moving like apartments just like down the hall in like a month and a half, and I'm gonna get a PC because we have like an actual room that I can get a PC in there. Move there and I'll start playing. But yeah, I don't know anything about the champions other than like or the gameplay. I understand it, but like when people start talking about like item builds and like what runes, like whatever, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So
Nathan, I've got a guy in Key West that built my computer.
Yeah, I think you sent me the information.
Yeah. He'll take care of you.
I will for sure. I know that like Neostalgic also sent me some good info on it. I've been thinking about it for a while. I just gotta pull the trigger on actually doing it. So
All right,
yeah.
so
You guys I was like, all right, I'll take a back seat. Also, my puppy just made a little bit of a mess, so I had to go clean that real quick.
So when we're talking about this from a cash game perspective, because we did kind of get off on a tangent there, and it was great. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Where are we looking from a cash game perspective, Nathan? I know that you play an obscene amount of money in a cash game, situation, so much that they probably couldn't refund you if you played a COVID-19 player and you posted it because you were a tout site and you wanted to, get refunds for it. But
I'm not allowed to get refunds anymore. So I don't know if this is happened to you, James, but there was like a period, probably not, honestly. There was a period like 6 months ago where I was playing just like everything. And I'm talking like, and we had just gotten like our first puppy, and like I had just didn't sleep for like a month. Like I didn't sleep for a month. And there was like a week period where like I fell asleep 3 times making lineups, and I got refunds 2 times. And the third time I asked for a refund, and I said like, listen, like it won't happen again. Like I'm sorry, like I just literally fell asleep, sleep or whatever. They were like, we'll give you the refund, but you have to acknowledge that we're never gonna do this again for you.
Yeah, they might, but
and I agree. But yeah, no, I can never get a refund anymore for cash stuff, especially.
But where are we going? Where are you thinking cash wise? Yeah,
I think it's probably pretty straightforward. I mean, I think it's like you're gonna play some just the two. What I'd go open the odds again because I closed them out. But if I open up here, it's probably just like what Ultra Prime, and then I mean it's Ultra Prime and BLG, and you just suck it up and play the double support if you have to. I do not think you like in double ups and head to heads. In winner take alls, do not suggest playing this lineup. Simple as that.
You don't think that you should go Victory 5 over anyone's legend?
Well, I think that it's like okay. So here's the
Victory 5 over Ultra Prime, not anyone's legend.
Yeah, no. So I guess you gotta in the winner take alls, sure. I think you probably do. You probably take Victory 5 over someone. I think in double ups head to heads, you're sort of like forced to take Ultra Prime BLG because of the odds, right? Like even if the odds are true in like the books have, right? Let's say that Pinnacle is like the end all be all. These odds are correct. Like V5 is -156 and Ultra Prime is -270, right? For you to be like correct in taking V5, they'd have to like the lineup you can play with them, I guess, has to outscore at like a very high percentage. And I think that it comes down to also what stakes of the head to heads you're playing at, because you get a lot more concentrated builds in different styles and different stakes, like the $5 double up versus like the head to heads that I have with like S Gogineni or whatever, how you pronounce his name, SGOGIN, what very different. Like he's gonna play the double support lineup in some capacity.
For what it's worth, I agree with you that it is BLG and Ultra Prime and cash.
Yeah,
I just wanted to ask about Victory 5 because we did talk about that Victory 5 OMG being like the highest outside.
But you can't build a lot with Ultra Prime and BLG. I mean, like you're getting support captains.
You're handicapped into playing. You're screwed into playing the double support, but you're thinking that there's like V5 only wins if they're -150. They only win according to those odds and whatever with the juice. It's like 15. What is it? Like 58 to 62% of the time, something like that, in that range. Which means that you need that V5. Whatever, like Ultra Prime lineup to outscore the other lineup like 80% of the time or something like that. Like 85% of the time for it to be like the better lineup to choose. Which isn't the case.
So let me ask you this. Like the non-shim call-ups, they're not playing their normal lineup. They're going to play their challenger lineup. Their challenger team is not as good as DRX's challenger team. And Bro is just a bunch of dudes that, they can fuck. Like they can fuck you over. They're not a team that scores a ton of points sometimes, but they're a favorite, presumably a favorite because they're obviously not on the books. But like up with Brion gives you a lot of options. The problem, like with V5, you're running a support captain. With up and BLG, you're running a support captain. And if you're running V5 and BLG, you're running a surprise support captain. And I don't run support captains. I just don't do it. Like
so
it's
here's a very big divide.
I don't do it in cash. Like I just think it's a cowardly move.
So okay,
and I won't do it.
Here's a big divide in the League of Legends cash scene, if that's a thing that exists in this world.
Like all 10 of us?
There's like 10 to 15 of us that are in that like category of people. As my dogs go nuts in the background, I'll try and over.
Do they always go nuts like this, or is it only when you're on?
They're both under a year old. Like they're 11 months and 4 months, and they just go crazy right now.
Good, because Moose's cat apparently never pays attention to him unless he's on the live stream.
Yeah, they go nuts pretty much all the time. But it's good because then they sleep really well. But so the thing is, your lineup and you're not wanting to play support lineups is great for winner take alls and for 3-mans and for whatever. Like I would never play a double support lineup in a 3-man unless it was like a 2-game slate in which I needed to play double fave in my cash lineups where like the favorites were like minus 600, both of them. But like in your double ups and head to heads, if you're taking a severe loss of probability,
Yeah, man. Like I get it. I think the one spot where you could play the support captain and where I will play it and I feel good about it is when you run into these people, and we're not going to name names here, but they play like 6 different lineups or 6 different teams in one lineup, and like you just need the safety of that. Yeah, like who knows? It's $90 a month for that site.
At that point, you're just doing a prove it lineup, though. Like at that point, you're just saying, "I know what I'm doing," and you don't, and like you just run the safest thing possible.
Yeah, which is what I do. I mean, I will say a majority of my cash action is against one person, and they play in the way that Emmerich just said. I would say like 50% is against this guy.
Yeah, man, and he's just like limited his like. I mean, that just sucks. Where you have to take one in every stake now. Like you can't just play a ton against him if we're talking about the same person, because it's one of like 2.
If you post, he will take them. Just a heads up.
Oh, okay, all right.
So,
well, now look, if he doesn't, then I end up playing you, and it's just a problem.
Well, I'm not going to play games. I generally don't take. I won't take Ian's. I won't take yours.
I'll take one. I'll take one. Yeah, I'll take one.
But I think that it's against those kind of guys, like James said, it's even more like you play the safest thing possible, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But what I was saying about the divide is I think a lot of people are playing winner take all-esque lineups in double ups and head to heads. So and you and like one other person specifically like way too often. But I'm not kind of like the other person.
Yeah, I mean, look, I play the winner a lot of times they're hedges. They're hedges. Like honestly, like looking at the slate, I'm not going to play a lot of cash. I'll play winner take alls, but my winner take alls will be hedges to my GPP lineups to try and break even if things don't go the way that I want them to. That's just the way that I play. I'm not like an all in or like I'm gonna win or I'm gonna lose. I'm not like you in my strategy. It's like if I win, it's gonna be great. If I lose, I'm gonna try and kind of like claw some of that back with some different contests. And like just not being able to play at least like a jungle captain with like 2 favorites without going to like DRX, who I don't have a ton of faith in. I just probably won't play a lot of heads up. Like it's just what'll end up happening for me in the slate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like for me, it's not even like what feels better. It's just like it just comes like double ups are just like end all. Yeah. Like there it is. At least Ian, that's fair.
Dude, look, Nathan's making lineups for every single person. He's like, okay, like if I'm playing this guy,
like I would love to play the double ADC, the double jungle captains if I can, but like when it comes down to it, it's all just like odds dependent, and like you build for the best odds combination pretty much.
Yeah, we just don't click a button, Nathan. It's not that easy, okay?
I know that's true. I do just click a button.
We got to click 7.
Top right of my computer, it just says like build lineups. and it's just like it does it all. It goes to the site, it exports projections, it builds them all, it sorts them, and it enters my GPPs for me. So, that's all you need. Just get a button.
So if we're not playing cash and we're playing GPP, I mean, I think the primary targets are obviously the OMG Victory 5 and up. Like those are spots. BLG is a favorite. I mean, outside of the dogs, outside of what I've said, or just to go on top of what I've said, like James, is there a spot that like is super attractive to you that we haven't talked about or not talked about enough? Because I think we've talked about everything.
Yeah, I don't know how you get away from splitting that Victory 5 OMG game. I actually think that, so we talk in the Discord about something called an anchor. It's five lineup strategy that I came up with during quarantine that was really, really strong. And basically what you do is you take 2 games and you split both of them, or no, you have one team that you have across 3 teams, and then you split 1 game. So say that you have BLG and you split that against 2 games. And then for 1 lineup, you have TT. So you have 5 lineups. You have 4 with the team that you think is going to win. And then you have 1 that's a hedge. And then you pair that other hedge with the other biggest favorite on the slate, or the other highest favorite on the slate, or whatever. So you cover a lot of bases that way if you're able to identify what games have the highest upside. So for this slate, I think you probably just split Victory 5 OMG, because like I think everyone here is in agreement that game is just like the highest upside game. My metrics have it that way. Emmerich, I'm sure yours does as well. And Nathan, I'm sure you see it that way as well. Like, you just split that game, and then I do really think if you're in a larger field tournament, if you're in the 15, or if you're in 5 or something like that, and you can stomach it, I do think that it's worth splitting the BLG and TT game, because we have not acknowledged that TT has just like these obscene stats and wins, and we're still pretty early in the season. I don't think that it's likely that TT ends up winning, but if they do, then I think that's probably one of the highest upside spots on the slate. BLG gives up quite a bit in losses, so that's probably what I would do. If you're not going to do that, then I guess you would probably split up Victory 5 and OMG, and then just take a shot on either anyone's Legend or Ultra Prime, whichever side you want.
Yeah,
James, I feel like you're doing a very good job of embracing what we do here in the Cove. We talk to people and we tell them, play TT. That's a good idea. We just steer them in the right direction, just for all of our lineups. Play TT. It's a great. Look, we look like geniuses. If it hits,
look like geniuses.
It was in the range of outcomes. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, bud. Like.
I always try. I try so hard because of the models that I build, and because they are range of outcomes. Do you guys know how easy it would be for me to just be like, "Look, man, I do like range of outcomes. I'm not wrong. You're just losing money." Like it would be so easy for me to do that, but like I won't do that.
Yeah. Emmerich, what I was gonna say is the lineup you have on the screen right there is probably the most duplicated lineup on the slate. Like
100%,
100%.
Yeah.
How many times is that played? Over under 40 times in the GPP.
So if you want to make this different, like you obviously do something like this, and then you just like it's a similar lineup, but
also duped 100 times. No,
okay.
not 100 times, but like because that first lineup is like the lineup to play if you're gonna be stacking those 2 teams. Right, that's the ENJ winner take all lineup right there.
It's probably Ian's lineup. It probably is. So that's how you get really different with
and that's fair, right? So like these variations are obviously less owned and possibly like maybe someone else, because they have the same thought process as you, is going to duplicate you. Just because such a large portion of the GPPs for League of Legends are just people that like people that like know what they're doing, I guess. It's a pretty sharp overall field. Just the amount of people that are maxing it that are good, at least that are decent, is much higher than like other sports, obviously. Just being a niche sport. Really, can you stop? She's just sitting here just scratching the bed.
No, here's what you do. So you go with that, right? You go with like that 3-3 variation, and then you one off the team.
That's Nathan right there.
You just like if you go back in every single GP and you download the CSV and then you like sort from my lineups, you will see a total of 0 4-3s. Like every like decent like non plus 600 like
yeah,
dog.
but you're talking about like in the 15. Like you play the 4-3s.
Oh, in the 3-3-3, yeah, because you play a dog 4-stack in the 3-3-3 and you're generally fine. Like not everyone's gonna duplicate you.
When you're in the smaller fields, I think that you
4-3-3.
you do yourself a disservice by trying to one off because there's still correlation with the team slot, and like the worst thing in the world, because I've done it plenty of times, is you have the 4, you have the 2, and if you just had a 4-3, you would have taken it down, but you end up in like 5th or 6th, and like like $800 is cool, but like it doesn't pay your rent.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, the big part of that is that you turn it in from a 2-team parlay to a 3-team parlay.
Yeah.
And like just go do that on a sports book and look at how high the odds jump up.
Yeah, you're decreasing the probability overall of your lineup succeeding. Where like in a contest like a 3-3-3 where it's 30x to first and it's an 100-person field, decreasing your probability by like 2 to 3-fold is probably not the best idea.
Right.
But when you're playing in the 15 where first place is 600x your entry, 666x your entry.
There you go, Ian. Play Astralis in your LPL lineup. There you go.
That works. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, Vince.
I was just going to ask why this team's on there.
Thank you.
Okay. So the reason is because I think it's because I uploaded, like I created the entire CSV, and I put the LEC because normally they have them together, but they didn't, and now like it's uploading there. Like it took me until like today to get Doggo put in there, but like look, I paid for a year and it's super cheap, and like they're like if I went to SaberSim, for example, $90 a month, I paid like $300 for the year, and like I'm getting a $300 product for the year with my optimization here of Astralis in that spot. So that's pretty cool. Good job, Labs.
That's a wonderful feature to be able to stack a different league. They should allow it. I would love to see like a week-long like adjusted score contest where like LEC, LPL, LCK, and LCS are all put together. I think that would be great. And just to see the most ridiculous lineups you've seen in your life. Like
man. You know what starts tonight is not only there's the PCS, but the VCS is starting as well. And I've got a couple wagers.
Top tier leagues.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I think one thing that I will touch on is that like I'm generally the guy that's gonna take the 40% dog in like so many matchups. However, bias that I hate OMG, but let's throw bias out the window. The pricing dictates a lot on the slate. And you can play the jungle captains with V5 and Ultra Prime, like you said, but you can't double mid it, and you can double mid and double AC every single team with OMG. They fit with everybody, and everybody loves them. I don't know. It's like a really weird spot. The ownership of like this kind of thing is so hard to like gauge because like what I do and what you do and like what like I don't even know who else maxes that we talked to, but what they do is like affects it so much to where like if I just like don't take OMG probably becomes a better play than V5.
I have OMG as higher owned.
Yeah, see that makes sense, right? That's what I'm saying is that because they're higher owned, you start getting to this really weird spot where the favorite's lower owned.
But so like, what do you have? I mean, and do you do ownership projections for like the 15, or do you do them for the like? Honestly, like the way that I kind of look at the ownership projections is more like I try and figure out what they are in the 333. Like that's what I care about. Like because I'm not maxing the 15. Maybe Nathan is. He's rich. I'm not. Depends on the week, right? Like it depends on the week. I think like OMG is probably going to be like a 45%, but like Victory 5 is going to be like 35% in at least that contest.
For large field, I do it for the 15. I have OMG. I have Able at 30%. I have Cream at 23%. And then for
what's Photic?
For Photic, I have 19, and he's the highest owned for V5.
So obviously you understand exactly what I'm saying then. If the favorite's lower owned, it becomes this really weird spot where like how many people are adjusting for that?
Right. Yeah. You kind of have to fifth wall it, right? Like
what
you have to galaxy brain, and you have to think, okay, so everybody knows that the favorite is going to be
there's so much
LeBron.
leveling.
Yeah.
I think there's almost no leveling in NBA, NFL.
Right.
There's a lot of leveling in winner take alls and smaller field stuff with League of Legends and CS:GO.
Yeah,
Just so much.
I think smart people will jump back on the V5 train, but the 15 will stay soft. Like I think that the higher dollar stuff is going to be much closer, like probably even owned.
Yeah, it's just a really weird spot, and like I hate these kind of spots. I mean, I love them obviously, but I sit there and I out level myself a million times because like how many levels are you gonna go? Because like with me, it's like I know that a significant portion of the 15 is from guys that are entering 94 lineups.
Mm-hmm.
There's like I want to say there's like 6 to 10 of us that do it every single day. In that range, like Kevin, Rob, Mike, MC, whatever, the same guys. Out of all those guys, how many are looking at these odds and these ownerships the same way that we're looking at it right now? If they're a good player, a decent amount.
I guess it depends. I think that, and we can galaxy brain this literally all night. We can just go back and forth. We can just level it 45 times.
Outlevel yourself.
But I think at the end of the day, what you're doing, what you specifically, Nathan, are doing when you're MMEing against those guys is you are battling against them, and maybe you try to take advantage of the way that they're thinking, but more likely you're trying to take advantage of what the rest of the field is thinking.
Yeah.
You already know that the other guys are smart enough to make the right choice here. So would you purposely put yourself in a negative EV position because of the pricing and because of the ownership, simply to try to beat the other guys who are then playing at plus EV, right? Like that, it gets really, really hard in large field. And typically what I usually do is in the 15, like I'm just going to play what's plus EV. But then when I go into the higher dollar tournaments, like if I'm playing like 333 or 555 or something like that, then I'm going to try to level it. And then I'm going to look at the rest of the competition and be like, oh, Nathan sees these odds too. He sees this ownership too. Yeah. Like I probably want to go with the less EV thing so that I can try to take advantage of his thoughts.
Yeah. I think it ends up like, I'm sure before I build my lineup, I'm going to go take a look at like who has the M next to their name on the entrance list for the 15 even. Because like if there's 15 guys that are like, there's not 15 guys every night, but if there's 15 guys in there entering 94 lineups, and like I know they're good, then I'm like I probably don't change much, but I probably start taking more of an equal stance on it. You know what I mean?
Take a little bit more of a stance on the other side.
Yeah, because it's a total like I know that they're good. I know that they're thinking the same thing as me for the most part. So, but yeah, it's definitely a weird spot where when the dog is chalk, it's always an interesting slate.
Yeah. And I think we're going to for sure have that.
It's always OMG also, for what it's worth.
It is.
Yeah. I think having like Nongshim kind of off the board here in this particular slate and bro, and just I feel like it kind of hurts the overall slate. Like we're 3 LPL with 1 LCK. Nobody's talking about this DRX HLE. I think that might be a key to unlock something. Play them in the bigger field tournaments. I don't know. Like, is there what is the outcome, James, of like this OMG Victory 5 game just not being the game to split, like just not being in the optimal lineup? Where do you find that?
Oh, dude, it's like 90%. I mean, like if no, seriously. So like if you look at their past performances and you look at like all that stuff, OMG has the highest percent chance of scoring 40 plus fantasy points and wins, and it's only at 18%. So like I think that if you look at it that way, that's why I mentioned HLE earlier. Like with Hanwha Life, they only score 40 plus and wins like 8% of the time, and that's a spot where you're like, okay, that's a significant drop from the rest of the squad. But I mean, V5 gets there 17% of the time, Ultron gets there 16% of the time, Nongshim gets there 17% of the time, Thundertalk gets there 17% of the time, and like these are all in-win projections. So I think when you look at it that way, And even if you look at the opponent fantasy points allowed, it's not like OMG and Victory 5 are both way up there. Victory 5 or OMG allows 31.04 fantasy points in losses, and Victory 5 actually only allows 28.9. So like the margins are thin. I think the margins are thin if you're looking at medians. If you're looking at upside, I can go over and I can look into wins of outcomes, and Fodic is like a god. He's so good. 33% of the time, he scores 40 plus.
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking probably back at past seasons too when you're looking at that data, right?
No, this is just a season.
Oh,
I have 2021 and 2022.
Well, and I mean, look, like so, Victory 5 in their wins has never had less than 17 kills.
Yeah, they're a crazy team.
OMG, you know, they had the 13 against TT. That was a super weird game. But outside of that, you know, like outside of the test game, they had the 15. But, you know, they have enough games that if they have a 15 or a 16, they're going to offset it. But, you know, the same can be said about Up. Like, I think the only way that you get away from one of those teams is if you have Up in your lineup with somebody else instead of one of those teams. And if we think like where do you have the Up ownership? Where's Elk's ownership? Let me ask you that.
I have Elk at 19 to 21. And then I have Cryin at 13. They're about the same owned as V5.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just pricing wise, like you can't really fit both happily.
Yeah.
I think, Emmer, to answer your question about how often does the V5 OMG lineup end up in the winner or the optimal 4-stack, I think as much as I don't run my own simulations and stuff like that, I do use, which I'm sure James looked before in his life as well, that Osmo has like this top stacks tool.
Yeah.
That's not spot on, but it's pretty useful to where like one of those teams is probably going to be your top 4-stack like a third of the time, if not more. But it does mean that 2/3 of the time they're not the top 4-stack, and you can kind of be away from that game.
I mean, on a 6-game stack with the teams that we have, with what, 4 LPL games, like
What?
we have a lot of teams that have upside on this. It's not just OMG and
it's a big slate. Yeah, it's a big slate. There's 5 games, so you got 10 teams, and
there's 4.5 games.
Like I think that Nongshim is probably one of there's like 2 teams that I would avoid on this slate. It would be Nongshim and HLE, and that's pretty much like it. But I think anybody else, like you can take a shot. Even TT. I don't like you could even go into it and say like that conversation that Nathan and I were having about like the levels and like thinking through things. If you wanted to be unique on anything that you build with V5 and OMG, you can take a shot on anyone's legend, which people are likely not going to take a shot on. You can take a shot on Thunder Talk, which people are likely not going to take a shot on. I think that more people will be more interested in certainly Ultra Prime and probably DRX. DRX sucks. There's a lot of ways that you can go about it. I think that there are other dogs. There's going to be so much focus on that Victory 5 and OMG game. The 2 ways to go about it is just like you can just take one of those dogs and take anyone's Legend or Thunder Talk and pair it with either Victory 5 or OMG and just do whatever you want because it's going to be much more unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it isn't anyone's legend. I mean, like I haven't been talking about them. There's usually one stance I take on any live stream, whether it's football, whether it's esports, and I just, you know, yesterday it was IG, and obviously that was a problem. There have been plenty of situations where this goes over and over, and like I did it to Forge. I don't know if Forge is the guy that you need, but maybe anyone's legend. Maybe you should play a little bit of them. Maybe.
They have upside.
They do.
Upside spot.
They do, but you know, there have been plenty of people. We talked about it, like that guy that like lost his first 20 slates would have been the best GPP player in the world, but he played Harrow and like anyone's legend and Zabuji, and now he is homeless. You know, like that guy's homeless.
to what I will say to that guy, just take yourself up by your bootstraps, stop eating avocado toast, and
Play
some more
TTAL.
Yeah, there you go.
That person is named Nathan. Nah, there's a bunch of people that just like. I think I played Rogue Warriors every slate last year,
I don't think I played them once.
but not like in a crazy like spots. Like I would just throw some exposure in there. But like it was just at some point it just became for the culture. I couldn't stop doing it because I had to. Because if I didn't do it, I was a fraud.
Yep.
I think what's an Avalanche feels the same way, Emmerich, about it. You can't not play Rogue Warriors when
we had when V5 had their full season of losing everything. Hatter in the Discord, there was one time where I was gone for like 3 hours or something, and he came in and he was like, guys, we just got to play V5 tonight, and he got everybody on board, and I came back to chaos in the Discord. I'm like, are y'all fucking high? Like, do not listen to him about this V5. And then they ended up winning and like crushing the next like full season. And that's why in the Discord now we have that V5 for Worlds logo, because that's Hatter's thing. That is his.
Yeah.
And that was a crazy week, because that was also the week like 2 days later, I think it was Maple and that LNG team beat the defending spring champion JDG.
Oh yeah, it was JDG.
Same week.
Right. Yeah.
In that same week.
Yep. Oh, the LNG FPX game also that happened that season. So like I think the Hatter the night that Hatter won everything, everyone won everything, it might have been the first game of that summer split.
Yep.
Because that's the first. That was my first. So like I wish that I had been playing high volume DFS the spring of 2020. I wasn't. I was only playing the Minimax, and my first like win where I just like swept a bunch of top places and made a bunch of money was the first game, the 2-gamer with V5 in the first opening game, because no one played them, I guess, besides me and you guys.
Yeah.
We just like chopped 1 through 15, just like 1, 1, 2, 2, like all the way down, and like nobody wanted to play it, and it was like. I will always play V5, whether they're good or bad, just for
absolutely, that. Yeah. And you have to do that. Like you.
And that was PP God and Sam D. They're both on the slate,
dude. They were the combo of destiny. And Nathan, here's your sign, dude. You are completely biased against OMG, and you have to ride V5.
I don't know, man.
That's what we got tonight. There you go. Just ride V5,
right?
Who else was on that team? Like who were the other pieces?
Weiwei. Was it not Weiwei? I think he was on there as the jungler. The mid was someone. Oh, he sucked so bad. Who was the mid?
Hang on. I'm pulling it up right now.
The top was the top not new. The top was new the year before, I think, or something like that. God, Sam D, PB God, Weiwei. Top was someone bad. When you tell me it, I'm gonna be very. I'll yeah. It's gonna bring back memories, happy memories, of course.
Here we go. So the first game. This is summer 2020. Like, what's going? No, this is not it.
Let me see.
Hang on. I'm gonna make it smaller on my screen here.
See if I can find it. Also, I'll go back to the beginning.
Yo. Summer season, because it was 2020, right? We're talking 2020,
so. But maybe not. It was against.
Okay. It was again. It was the second day. It was the second day. Yeah. It was Mole. It was Mole.
You. Weiwei. Sam DPB God. Yeah. What a squad.
And it was against Dominus, man. They were bad too, but yeah, no,
yeah, they were. They ended up the worst team in the league.
They ended up being TT, right? That's TT, right? Or is that
DMO? Is T? Are they or are they Ultra Prime?
Yeah, they're Thunder Talk. Yeah.
No, Ultra Prime is E-Star.
Yeah. You got it.
Which I hate the rebrands. Just bring me E-Star and Dominus and let me be happy. incoming.
Yeah.
Oh, the Lang X top was also a big deal. There was like a 3-month span where I didn't know the difference between Lang X and Flandre, and like I would just jam them. Like I'd be like, all right, that's the guy. Like obviously very different players, but I didn't know any better at the time. So whenever I saw that guy's name, I was like, let's play him. Why not?
Yeah, they were, and everybody thought Cryan was good because of it, and like I had to talk
Cryan
to him
is
for
too
that.
good, man. What do you mean? He still has
I mean,
projections.
through MSI last year, people were still like, Cryan's good. I'm like, no, dude, he's not good. And by the end of the season, everybody's like, yeah, maybe he sucks. So.
Yeah, no, he's not like what people thought he was for sure. But
all right, well, hey, we've gone for almost 2 hours. It's great. I do have to bring one person in as a promise here. Hang on, I'm sending it in. It's not Gugs, but somebody wants to talk to you directly, Nathan. But while we're waiting for that person to come in, James, do you have anything, like any closing statements about this slate or anything, or just plug your stuff? Where can we?
You can find all of my projections and everything that I do over at paydirtdfs.com. You can find me at paydirt_DFS on Twitter. And the thing that I'll say, like, to end this is, if you're not playing esports DFS, you should be playing esports DFS because it's fun, and because the projections are fun to build, and because, like, what is better than waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and watching like teenagers playing video games so you drink coffee and sort out your lineups? Like, it's just the nuts.
Nothing is better than that. I will tell you that listen, here's the most plus EV move you can get. If you're thinking about getting a puppy, get a puppy, because it's the time to do it with LCK and LPL in season. You're gonna be up anyways with the puppy or have a baby. Might as well watch some Legends while you're at it.
Damn sure.
All right, so Nathan, here you go.
Oh, the number one fan? Yeah, Kevin. Okay, Kevin. What's up, buddy?
I just want to say I love you and thank you for the knowledge. Best DFS player in the world, N Van Hair on Twitter. Give him a follow. Now that I'm on a show with you, I have a chance of cashing the slate tomorrow. So
yeah, man, you can win. You win when I don't. So just go crush the slate, because I can guarantee you that OMG is gonna win tonight and I'm gonna lose. So.
Spell. That's a good one.
Oh, Kevin. Yeah, Kevin, don't go to James' Twitter. You will cry.
No, he's got a good Twitter. I see him on Twitter.
You read through all his tweets? All his replies?
Not all of his tweets.
Okay. Kevin's got some opinions.
So hey, as we lost half of our viewership, I do want to say, like, if you're watching this on YouTube,
Lost half because I came on.
We did actually. We did. Can you please, if you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead, sub, like the video. If you're not, you're watching it on Twitter, go to the YouTube, sub, like the video, do all that good stuff. You can find us also, like me, Nathan, even Nathan's number one fan, over in the esports department Discord. Just go to the website, click on the Discord. It's free. It's a lot of trolling stuff. We troll the fantasy panel. We troll a lot of people. It's a good time over there. And there's a guy, Mike B. We trash him too.
We're also in the paid Discord, for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's a little more level-headed over there. It's a step up. Like, that's like a more of a professional environment, and we're wearing soft pants over in the esports department. We're wearing jeans over there. Like, just wear the accordion pants. You don't have to wear a shirt here or anywhere. Tomorrow we will have, we've got Alan H from the Infinity Edge. We're going to be having Gugs, and he's going to be telling stories of soccer moms and dads mad at the referee, who obviously doesn't care because he's only there getting paid $30 a game. Tales from the Instacart from Googs, and all of these great stories tomorrow. Maybe Kev will be on there, maybe somebody else. I don't know.
Poor Alan. He doesn't know what to say for. Oh no!
I'm sure Russian Bear will be there, but hey, it's been a good show. It's been fantastic. Hopefully you learned something, Mike. If you're watching, fuck you. And we'll talk to you later.